Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Roast. It's Sunday the 19th of January. I'm Phil Carroll.
I'm Kevin Hornsby.
I'm Charles Archer.
So here we are, the 19th already. I mean, Charles...
What do you mean already? It feels like it's about the 19th of June.
Yeah,
you were
January is always this way.
It feels like you've done 3 months' work in about two or 3 weeks, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think what it is, right, is that like you don't do any work between Christmas and New Year, and then the first week of January, everyone pretends to work, but no one. We sit in a chair for 40
pushing
hours.
pens around, and
then the second week of January, you do like a little bit of work, and then I've got to this point now where I've got so much work to do. I'm still in holiday mode mentally, but yeah, I don't know. How are you guys feeling?
Yeah, how did the move go? Because last time we spoke, you were sounding like you were in an echo chamber. You know, it was really like, it sounds like you've actually got maybe some rugs and carpet down now in the office.
We got rugs. We got. I'm going to get a carpet in here at some point.
Looks like you may even have a plant there.
I've got a cactus. Yeah, I've got. It's lovely. You know, it's still alive.
You're looking quite tanned as well, Charles. Have you been in the sort of winter sun, or have you been doing some heavy exercise?
I'll tell you what. I've just been lifting heavy shit effectively, all day, every day for the past month, and I'm almost there now. The only things that are left to do, we need to re-patio the garden.
So you've been lifting boxes, not weights.
Not weights.
Oh no, just what? It's more like it's like going into an attic, right? And like everything is boarded over and everything feels safe. And you're slowly, gingerly putting your weight. And my foot went through the floor at one point, but it's fine. I'm still alive. It's just this is the problem, right? Like when you move house, there's so many. Like your choices are to move into something that's like just turnkey and then everything's fine, but it's all really expensive, or to buy something you need to fix, but then you have to fix it. That's the problem. Nearly there, though.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at some of the news stories that have dominated. I mean, and really, there's only been one story as far as I'm concerned, and it started with "We have a deal" as Donald Trump trumpeted. Reports emerged that the Israeli government and Hamas had finally agreed to a ceasefire. In what otherwise been a gloomy start to 2025, at last there seems to be some welcome news from the Middle East. Celebrations on the streets of Israel, Tel Aviv and Gaza, and there's now real hope that the 15th-month conflict can be brought to an end. Obviously, both sides will probably no doubt claim that the other has conceded to their demands, but what was always certain was that the incoming US president would demand the plaudits. So, you know, Trump warned, didn't he, all hell will break loose in Gaza if a deal was not signed before his inauguration tomorrow. And this was followed by Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, traveling to Tel Aviv to hold talks with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, where it was said Witkoff read the right act to the Israeli leader. So, I mean, obviously, as it stands at the time of recording this, they are having a cabinet meeting literally now to vote on the Gaza ceasefire because there was some last-minute changes. Obviously, we saw quite a few rocket attacks overnight with many killed as well. So what is the likelihood of this being signed through, do you think?
Oh, you like to hope that it gets signed. I mean, there's in terms of like who gets the credit for getting this signed, I imagine that Biden's put in a lot of work, maybe not him personally, but his administration, to get a peace deal that could be signed. And then you have Trump making sure it does get signed. It's almost like the perfect married couple in many ways is actually what you wanted. The question is whether it can stick, because this region of the world there's been violence forever. And you have this situation where, the October 7th attacks, there's a lot of Israelis who are incredibly angry still and will never not be angry. And then the repeated bombardment of Gaza, where, you've now probably, for every terrorist you've killed, if you want to call them terrorists, you've probably created 10 more. What's the long term? What does it look like long term for that region of the world? I suspect you'll just have more violence in another year or two. I hope not. I really hope not. But I don't see it lasting particularly long. I mean, what do you think, Kev?
Yeah, I mean, it's a humanitarian disaster at the minute.
Yeah, it is.
So it's not really a ceasefire as such because they're bombing the living daylights out of them. So it's like, what are they ceasefiring from? Because it's not a war at the minute. It's the Israelis basically creating a genocide, whether you like it or not, and whether people want to use that word or not, I don't know. And I do not say the Jewish people. I say the Israeli state because that's what it is. It is a Zionist
Zionists.
Israeli state that has basically chosen to destroy Gaza and also destroy parts of Lebanon. And don't be surprised if something happens in the West Bank in more detail over the next period of time. I'm not hopeful. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, Gaza's probably uninhabitable now for those 2 million
Yeah.
people that live there.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's political games going on here. Biden has obviously been party to all of this. Trump is now coming in, and I think he wants this to be basically there's a ceasefire as I come in. So, in other
Yeah.
words, it was me.
Been timed to
Rah rah
perfection,
rah.
hasn't it, for him to
Mm.
take the credit? I
Um,
mean, while we're on the subject, that obviously we've, a new and different American political era begins tomorrow as Donald Trump becomes the 47th president of the US. Just what can we expect? I mean, if we just step back from a moment from it and look at the sort of, the US equity market, which, as I said, had an extraordinary 2 years with the most important share index, the S&P 500 up by more than 20% in both 2023 and 24. Joe Biden is, he got very little credit for that, partly because for probably many Americans, this meant that the rich got even richer. We've looked at the markets, we've talked about them, big confidence in the American, the big tech giants, Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, Nvidia. Share index focused on obviously the NASDAQ was up nearly 30% last year. So Trump's going to take office buoyed up, by the hugely confident business sector. Leaders of their, been quick not to voice support for him, but also to trim their spot. But what do you think's going to happen, like in that respect? Is he going to take credit, and then are we going to see some sort of bubble burst going forward? Do you think we can give credit to Biden for the last 2 or 3 years' performance?
Well, I genuinely, I mean, my personal opinion is that presidents are always judged on their economic performance, but they have virtually no control over what happens with the economy.
Yeah,
It's almost like it's completely bizarre, but actually they don't. It's not within their remit or their power base, and yet it's what they're judged on. I mean, in terms of the S&P 500, I think the bubble will burst this year. What that
yeah,
looks like, I don't know. Where the event comes from, the trigger, the catalyst to drop it, I don't know. But I mean, if you look, I did an article on it at the start of the year. Do you know, it's the part over the past few years, the S&P 500 is up 60%, but the earnings are up just 5% overall.
yeah,
And if you actually looked at the headlines, you'd think it would be much higher, but no, they're up 5%. It's not particularly much. It's just in line with historical norms. The top 10 stocks in the S&P 500 are worth around $21 trillion. Is worth more than all the stocks in the UK, Germany, Canada, India, and Japan combined.
mm,
It's madness. It's madness. And it's gonna go. Obviously, we don't know when the music will stop. All we do know is that it will. And then the question is, with Donald Trump coming into power, he's talking about tariffs. If he puts tariffs on countries, if he decides to scrap income tax for Americans, you don't know what he's going to do. But if he
yeah.
puts tariffs on other countries, that could be it. That could be what causes the decline in the markets. But is that just a negotiation tactic? You never know with him. He's
Yeah,
just a loose
that's
cannon.
a big one, isn't it? The
when
Trump
the
tariff.
music stops, are you going to be sitting on the chair or not?
I've got cash. I'm out mostly of the large caps. I've had a really great run the past year or two, and I'm just sitting on cash. I'm waiting for the dip. I will say,
Well, the interesting thing I think about the American market and the S&P 500 is
hmm,
how much of it now is by passive investment.
so much,
You
so
know,
much.
this is my feel when we look back at previous in inverted commas crashes or market corrections, there was no way that there was this much passive investing going on into these markets, and they are they are effectively investing by the percentages. So the big five or whatever companies you want to call it, whether it's Google,
The Magnificent
Nvidia,
Seven. Yeah.
the Magnificent Seven, they are getting cash invested in their stock no matter what happens because of the passive investing side of things. Now, maybe that will drop off if there is a problem, but how many people have actually got their finger on the button and they're actually saying, "Ooh, maybe we do that." In America, I think the vast majority are passive investing.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, the problem is with passive investing is that ironically, it can amplify volatility, right? Because passive funds allocate capital based on market capitalization. So the S&P 500, like we're talking about, those Magnificent Seven, the Amazon, the Google, these companies are worth, almost 50% now, these seven of the S&P 500. They're driving all of the growth. The S&P 493, the rest of the stocks are basically doing nothing. So what you have is a situation where all the passive investment really is going into the most valuable tech stocks at the very top. And you're right, it keeps them up, but then it also means that you're having market valuations far in excess of their actual values, of their fundamental values. So it stops there being a crash for a very long time until there is one. And then it means that the crash is bigger than what it otherwise would be. That's my opinion. Now, I could be completely wrong. It might be that you're right. And there's so much passive investment going in that it can never properly crash. But I look at Nvidia, for example, or Apple or Microsoft, and their trillions and trillions of dollars in market valuation. And then you look at their earnings, and it's just lunacy. I mean, let's have look at a couple of like Tesla and MicroStrategy, for example. But Tesla is probably the poster child for this. Its market cap, it's worth more than every other car manufacturing company in the world. Okay, it sold 1.8 million vehicles in 2023, and yet 80 million vehicles were sold worldwide. So it has maybe 2% of the worldwide market share. And yes, it's got robotics, but every other robotic company in the world is worth what, 100 billion, maybe?
I mean, Tesla's not just about it's about the autonomy as well. There's a whole list of other things that dictate.
Yeah, the robotics, the autonomous driving, but like again, every other robotics company in the world is worth less than 100 billion combined. That's how much it moves day to day.
I mean, if you look at BYD, who are like the biggest selling car manufacturer in terms of EV in the world, like what value would that put on them if they were listed in the US? I mean, they'd be worth probably multiples of Tesla, aren't they, in terms of output?
Well, you think about BYD is worth, I don't know, like a couple of weeks ago, it's worth 85 billion and Tesla was worth 1.2 trillion, right?
Yeah.
And yet, yes, if it wasn't listed on NASDAQ, you'd think it would have a massive valuation spike. But the problem is the China risk factor. Any money you put into China is effectively controlled by the Chinese Communist Party and actions thereof. If you put money into that market, you can't be guaranteed that it'll be safe, even though you can probably be guaranteed you'll get really good growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, while we're on the subject of Musk, I just want to, obviously, we talked last week about the fact that how much influence and sway is he now putting on the likes of not just the UK government attacking, obviously Starmer. He's also had calls with the German government, the far right. But did you see the news that the Labour government has initiated, obviously, these local inquiries into grooming gangs, this national audit to address these, exploitation. And Home Secretary now, Yvette Cooper, has announced a 10 million package to support the investigation. So how much has actually now, as Musk, do you think, actually swayed that? Because they've seemed to have, no, we're not doing an investigation, and then on Friday or Thursday, we're doing an internal audit on there. So he's swayed things again, hasn't he?
I think he had. Well, obviously he's incredibly wealthy, incredibly powerful, but also in many ways, despite his personality quirks, he is a visionary. He made electric cars happen. He created rockets that you can reuse, which people said was impossible. There's a bloody Tesla out somewhere in space that he sent out for fun. Now, in terms of obviously the grooming gang situation is the most appalling, awful stain on our country imaginable. And the fact that I don't know for certain, I'm relatively confident that it's still going on today, as are most people, and we haven't stamped it out, and there's various reasons why. It just drives me absolutely insane. But it's to carve out. We have a justice system that's just crumbling. There's not enough police. The ones that there are don't want to do their jobs properly in certain areas of the country. And, Elon Musk, do I like him on a personal level? No. Do I think he's a fantastic manager and creator of value? Yes. Is the fact that we're going to get, a proper inquiry again into this because of what he's doing a good thing? Definitely.
It seems like he's stamping out woke and he's bringing back freedom of speech, which a lot of people would argue is actually needed. What the world we're living now in this matter. And then I see Zuckerberg apparently announces that Facebook is going to make some pretty radical changes. They're going to remove these moderators and effectively bring back almost like a community note or a community note action, which is mad because you've never. I mean, Facebook has been one of the most heavily censored platforms. You post a swear word and you end up in the Facebook sin bin, for 2 weeks. I've had a couple myself just for making some comments. And you think to yourself, they've gone full tilt now on that.
Well, I think it's the problem. Like, I run a Telegram group, right? We've got just over 1,000 members in there. I create all the rules. If people are difficult, we've had to ban, maybe 20 people over the past couple of years. But, it's the eternal question, quis custodis ipsos custodiet, who will guard the guards, right? Forever and ever. And on like that big, Meta, where you've got what, 3.4 billion people using its family of apps every single day, how do you regulate that? How do you guard it? I mean, like, for example, in multiple states in the US, they've literally banned porn. You can't see porn anymore unless you use a VPN. They're doing the same. I think this is a good thing. They're going to try to stop children under 16 from watching porn in the UK. It won't work because, children have no technology better than adults. But this is the whole thing. The whole problem is that it's freedom of speech versus preventing hate speech, I guess, is the online thing. And how do you quantify that? How do you deal with that? And like in the stock market, for example, I mean, we see this every day. You'll have a stock will have like positives and negatives. And you'll have individuals coming along trying to ramp up those positives to drive a share price far higher than what it should be. You'll have other individuals coming along to de-ramp it, to make it suffer. And you can never tell who are just, good actors and bad actors in the space. And then you extrapolate that out to the rest of social media. Yeah, mostly I'm more in favor of free speech. But then Twitter, for example, like the user experience of Twitter is become awful over the past 12 months.
Not good, is it? No, it's
No.
not good. So let's move on to our first guest this week. We're delighted to be joined by Sean Smith, CEO of Eden Research. Welcome to the podcast. It's a first for you, Sean, so it's great to have you on the roast.
Hi, Phil. Good morning. And yeah, thanks for the invitation to join you.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I don't really know a lot about Eden Research, so I'm really looking forward to sort of delving deep and unpacking the story behind the company. But let's just start with they're a UK-based company specializing in sustainable biopesticides and plastic-free encapsulation technology for the global crop protection, animal health, and consumer products industries. So, Sean, you've been the CEO of Eden Research since September 2014, and you hold a bachelor's degree in microbiology from the University of Kansas with over 25 years of experience in the specialty chemicals and biotech space. So what brought you to Eden in the first place, Sean?
Yeah, I was actually recruited in kind of a conventional fashion to join the company as CEO. And it was an interesting opportunity. At the time, I was working for a US-based private equity fund, basically originating deals in Europe for them, and was looking at lots of companies very, very similar to Eden. So I was very much from a work perspective, in that mode of assessing companies, in particular looking at their intellectual property, trying to understand the business case and trying to work out whether they were worthwhile investments from the fund's perspective. The Eden opportunity came across my desk, and although I had been MD of a couple of businesses previously, I'd never run a listed company, and I thought that was a really interesting opportunity. But if I were to be maybe say something that reveals a bit much, but for me, Eden, what was exciting about Eden, and is still exciting, even more exciting today, is that Eden was a convergence of things that I really enjoy, right? So although I have a degree in microbiology, frankly, my technical colleagues would laugh if I called myself a scientist. I've always been in commercial roles. That's what I enjoy. That's what I do. But I've always enjoyed the convergence of science and business. For me, selling copier paper wouldn't be as interesting as selling, some sort of sustainable pesticide, for example. But Eden for me was the combination of science, technology, intellectual property, food, and kind of biology plus chemistry. And for me, that was sort of the holy grail. And businesses like this there are not a hell of a lot of them, but there's an increasing interest in sustainable chemistry in our industry. And I saw then, and I see now, ironically, 10 years later, we were then and we are now pretty early mover in that space.
Very good. Yeah, so just talk us through exactly what it is that Eden does. Obviously the key products, you've got the Mevalone, the Ecovelex, and the Cedros, but talk us through those key products in sort of layman's terms, because obviously it could get quite technical.
Yeah.
And I guess how big that sort of potential market is for these biopesticides.
Yeah. So, okay, basically, if you start out, you say what we are doing is developing pesticides for crop protection applications, right? So ultimately, the people using our products are professional growers. They're farmers. that are growing, a whole range of different crops on a professional basis, both in open fields, but also in greenhouses, etc., polytunnels, etc., what have you. What we're doing is we're developing products that, unlike a lot of the conventional pesticide chemistry that's been used, our products are based on sustainable active ingredients, right? So we're formulating these sustainable active ingredients to create products that are themselves inherently sustainable, but that are effective to help growers solve the problems that they have. So anybody that's involved in gardening at home, or you've lived on or near a farm, you'll understand that a lot can go wrong in growing a plant. And if you're trying to make your livelihood around production of a crop, one of your major concerns, of course, you're concerned about the weather. We all know farmers love to talk about the weather, but one of your major concerns beyond that is disease pressure, pest pressure, etc. You're constantly fighting a battle to get the lowest cost crop produced with the least amount of land humanly possible to maximize the commercial opportunity associated with your use of the land for the production of food, for example. And so we are part of a group of companies and products ultimately that are coming to market to solve the same problems that have plagued farmers for decades, well, millennia really, with more sustainable approaches to it. And what we're doing specifically is we're harnessing a plant's own defense system to solve those problems. So why, and we talked a little bit earlier about this before the podcast, what is it that makes our product better in a sense? Well, the first thing that you have to know about a farmer is they're never going to pay a massive premium for a product. So that you've got to be competitive. You've got to have a product that's just as easy to use, ideally easier to use, that doesn't require special equipment, etc. Two, the product's got to work. Farmers are really not interested in marketing stories. They're interested in, they buy a bottle of a product. They know that if this problem emerges, they can open that bottle, they can put it in their tank, they can spray it, and problem gone. Because the harsh reality for growers is that if certain diseases break out, particularly if they break out at the wrong time, and it's always the wrong time, they might lose 50, 60, 70, even 80% of their crop in a matter of days. And so what we're trying to do is help them solve those problems, either prevent them or solve the problems with sustainable chemistry, using a plant's own immune system to achieve that.
So tell us a little bit more about the 3 or 4, if you like, legs to the chair that Eden has in terms of the different types of products that you have and the solutions that they bring.
Yeah, great. Well, so in the crop protection industry, very much similar to human health therapeutics, etc. Your workhorse is your active ingredient, right? So you have a molecule or a group of molecules that do a certain job. For us, those molecules kill insects, they kill fungal pathogens, they might tackle bacterial pathogens. In the case of one of our products, they repel birds. So those active ingredients are there for a reason. They're there to do a job. And so that's sort of one leg of the stool, if you will, Kevin, that you start with that. And for us, we're a bit unusual for a very small company in that we actually have a portfolio of 3 different active ingredients. And the question why 3 is a great one, because a lot of companies of our size have one. Well, the reason is because that portfolio of 3 actives gives us the ability to formulate products with a really broad range of capabilities. So with the same chemistry, we can tackle fungal pathogens. For example, the fungal pathogen that causes potato blight is one that's a target for us at the moment. The other one is, everybody knows, the kind of fuzzy black mold that grows on grapes or on strawberries. We've got products that tackle that fungal pathogen. Everybody knows what happens to apples if they're stored under the wrong conditions. You know what that looks like. That's caused by a combination of different fungal diseases. And
You
we've
get apple cider vinegar, I believe, no?
yeah, not in a nice way. Yeah. So the long and short of it is that these combinations, by using different combinations of these 3 active ingredients, different ratios, packaged up in different ways, we're able to target a really broad range of problems that are facing farmers. And so that's why we went through basically triple the effort, triple the time, triple the cost. But that gives us call it a toolbox. Sorry for the overused metaphor, but the toolbox full of these things that we can combine in different ratios and in different ways to solve different problems. And that's one of the things that's really important to us. Another leg to the stool, if you will, is our delivery technology. So I think when Phil was talking about the introduction, our sustainable delivery technology or sustainable microencapsulation technology, which is a fancy word for delivery technology, is a way of packaging those active ingredients up into a formulation so that it's useful. And if anyone knows a bit about pharma, okay, the active ingredient that you're using to tackle a disease is important, but equally important, it's getting that active ingredient to the place that it needs to be without causing more harm than is intended, and yeah, that you do so in the most efficient way possible. That's exactly what our microencapsulation is designed to do. So the less sexy end of it is that we're able to formulate products that have a stable shelf life, that don't separate, that have nice physical handling characteristics associated with them. And this is a part of formulation science, which isn't the most sexy area for discussion, but in fact is ultimately incredibly critical to developing successful products. But moreover, on the more interesting end of it, we're able to deliver those active ingredients in a really efficient way that means that those molecules are doing the best they can possibly do without causing unintended consequences. So very much like pharma, you can have what are called off-target effects. And that might be something like phytotoxicity, where you're burning a crop. Well, formulating our products the way that we do, we don't have those problems. And so that's another core element for us. So for us, the strength of what we bring to the table is an absolutely outstanding portfolio of active ingredients and a very sophisticated formulation technology and a lot of expertise around how to use these products to tackle this range of diseases.
Yeah, and can you expand out as well? Because obviously, that you've talked about bird seed and things, but you've got obviously things like locusts, stem borers, aphids, whiteflies, and even fungal diseases and viruses. So, is there a potential to expand out to attack these other?
Very much. Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I can probably the best way to answer it is to give you some really specific examples. So our first product is a product that's marketed in most countries under the name Mevalone, which is kind of a typical industrial trade name, but it's based on the kind of biosynthetic pathways that are used to synthesize these molecules. So it's one for your science fans. Those three active ingredients are packaged in a very specific way, in a very, very specific ratio. And through a number of discussions with partners and potential partners, we identified that there was an opportunity to protect seeds from bird damage, right? So a seed is a very expensive input for a farmer. Beyond labor, seeds are and energy are absolutely one of their top costs. So if a farmer is going to plant 100 seeds in the ground, they damn well want 100 seeds to come up. Otherwise, you're just taking cash out of their pocket if that doesn't happen. And we elaborated with working with our partner Corteva, which is one of the largest agriscience companies in the world, that this combination, a very similar combination of active ingredients, was very effective at repelling birds. So we could take that product, which is different than Mevalone, is formulated completely differently, but take that product, package it up, coat it on a seed, and help protect that seed from being eaten by birds. Why? Because those active ingredients that go down on that product, which is our seed treatment product, in fact, our first seed treatment product, which is going through the regulatory process right now, those very active ingredients interact with the bird's sense of taste and smell. And so by interacting with the bird in that way, and kind of in the way that a chili pepper would interact with you when you eat it, it makes that seed unattractive for them. And so while they might kind of settle down and try to follow farmers around gobbling up maize seed, they discover very, very quickly that maize seed is pretty unappealing, and they decide to move on. to the
So
next.
the birds need to put the toilet roll in the fridge before they eat your product.
Yeah, pretty much that exactly.
But I guess the next question really is of safety, isn't it? Because obviously this is already in operation, in countries around the world. How safe is this technology? How long have you been using it for?
It's a great question. And in fact, the answer to that is one of the real differentiators for our product, right? So by using natural chemistry, and I know Kevin had sort of touched on this point a little bit earlier, what is it? Why is it that our products are more sustainable? Because everybody uses the word sustainable. I mean, I wish I was
They
paid.
throw it around like
Yeah,
chicken.
if you paid me a pound for every time I heard the word sustainable during the course of a day, I wouldn't need to work.
Yeah, I've got oil companies saying their oil is sustainable, when we know the
Yeah,
well is running dry.
yeah. I don't get me started on that one because I'll bore you to tears with how that word is misused. But and it is misused daily. The point is that by using natural chemistry, we're working with chemistry that fish, plants, humans, mammals, birds, etc., have adapted to over many thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. And so while those active substances, those plant-based components might be fairly toxic in a sense in very high levels, at very low levels, we're all used to them. We can all deal with them. And they even have degradation pathways in the environment. So a lot of people will hear, and this gets a little technical, but I'll try to keep it
Yeah.
sensible. A lot of people who heard this term forever chemicals, and people are hearing about PFAS and PFOS and Teflon causing problems, nonstick pans causing problems, these molecules not going away. Well, that chemistry is great chemistry if you want to create an impervious coating that never goes away. The unfortunate bit is it's an impervious
Coating
molecule
that never
that
goes
never
away.
goes
Yeah.
away, right? And the truth is that with a lot of synthetic chemistry that doesn't originate in nature, those molecules don't have well-established pathways for disposal, if you will, in the environment.
Mm.
And so what might happen is they either degrade in a way that's super harmful, or they don't degrade at all, and they just accumulate in the environment.
Yeah.
With the actives that we're using, you consume them every single day. So they are safe. They are something that if you use thyme, for example, the herb, and you put that in a dish and you smell the really distinctive smell that thyme has. Most of that odor is actually coming from one of our active ingredients, which is
Mm.
called thymol. And so we're taking thymol from, for example, thyme, the plant, but it's present in many different plants as a part of their own innate immune system. We're taking those active substances and we're using them in a formulated product. So it's delivered in a way that you would never encounter naturally because the concentration is so much higher. We're
Right.
able to get the type of effect that we want without pumping a bunch of product into the environment that will never go away. Because
Yeah.
those products are, when I say they're sustainable, they are not long-term persistent
Yeah.
in the environment.
A bit of water and yeah. Yeah. I guess it's trying to because I'm not an expert in this at all, but I guess it's trying to figure out is the product that you have, are they patented, and what specifically is patented?
Yeah. So yeah, we have a pretty nice comprehensive patent portfolio that is based on composition of matter. So it covers, I guess, six different families where we're covering uses of these products. We're also covering their composition. We're covering combinations of different things when used together. And the patent portfolio is really useful to us, and when originally we were a licensing business many years ago, before we changed the business model to derive greater value from our portfolio of assets. What I would say to you is that the patents were very useful in that concept. What I would also say, though, is that because our industry is so highly regulated, at least as valuable, but frankly speaking, probably more valuable, is our portfolio of product registrations. So
Mm.
around the world, including in Europe, we have registered not only our active ingredients, the three active ingredients I keep talking about, but we've also registered formulated products based on them. And yeah, to say that regulatory is important in our industry is a massive understatement.
Yeah.
You don't do anything in our industry without regulatory authorization to do it.
Which
And
takes forever sometimes as well. Yeah.
well, they always take forever, which is painful, but okay, it is what it
It's
is.
you
It does.
understand why, don't you? You know, you're
You
eating
definitely
yourself.
understand why, and I feel for the regulators because they've got a very hard job to do. They want to help farmers solve the problems that they have, but at the same time, they have a responsibility to protect the population, society as a whole, the environment, etc., from products that might not be as sustainable and ultimately as useful.
Oh, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, I grew up on a farm, and they're doing okay now, but there's been years where it's been a struggle. And you know, like one of the big problems with farming is the profit margins are so low,
Yeah,
and therefore the temptation to use chemicals that you'd rather not is definitely there. And so you're filling that gap. If you can provide the service, a product which gets rid of the pests and ensures that you get the crop yields that you need to be profitable, while also being environmentally friendly, then people would prefer to do that, you know,
yeah,
every time.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I guess the question is then, I mean, why, you know, your market cap is standing around 22 million pounds roughly. I mean, I haven't checked today. Why haven't you been bought out? Why hasn't somebody just come along and written you a check and said, thank you very much, we'll take it from here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I used to work for what was at the time the world's largest specialty chemical company, which is a Swiss company previously called Ciba, but now is a part of Syngenta and or BASF, depending upon which part you're talking about. And I was involved in early stage technology acquisition, so sort of M&A type activities. And one of the things we always looked at, and it goes to answer your question, Charles, in our industry, a potential acquisitor, if you will always look at de-risked solutions, right? So
Yeah,
they'd rather pay a premium for a product that has been de-risked or a technology that's been de-risked than invest in the very early stage, perhaps for a discounted price. And that's because there is so much risk along the development pathway.
yeah, yeah,
It's a very similar dynamic to what you see in biotech, where a lot of innovations for many years had come from very small companies focused on very narrowly defined opportunities around one or several technologies or one or several active ingredients, if you will. And ultimately, Big Pharma worked out that they could live on a diet of innovations that had come from elsewhere. And based on the fact that you've got all these companies with a laser focus focusing all of their resource on the development of one or several products around a
mm,
given product area. And they could mitigate their risk by letting those guys that are going to fail and
yeah,
pick up the companies that have been successful. And it's very similar in our industry. A lot of the innovation in the biopesticide space is coming from companies like Eden. And there has been some deal flow around this over the years. Do I think that we could one day become a target for acquisition by a big player? Possibly. I would say the number normally you kind of want to be turning over around, let's call it 100 million or so pounds turnover every year.
mm,
Probably want the market cap to be, a bit north of that, obviously, or around that anyway, for you to start showing up on the radar. Before that, with our turnover, for 24, which looks like it's going to be about 4.3 million pounds, we would be a very small, as a whole, we would be a very
mm,
small product within the portfolio of the likes of Corteva. So you have to put it at that scale. Our entire company is less well resourced than the management team dealing with one product
yeah,
in a
that's
company
fair.
like that.
I guess, I mean, talking about this is the last question from me. I mean, we're talking about sort of growth and revenue. I mean, the revenue you were saying for full year 24, I think you just said 4.3 million. And you're talking in my head, I think it was like just over 3 million last year.
Yes, yeah,
So
exactly.
you're up to what, 30, 40% maybe.
Yes.
Um, and that's with a few, hiccups along the way. We don't need to delve into those. But I guess, that's pretty strong growth in just one year. I'm guessing this year coming, it'll be even higher.
Well, we've had a good couple of years of nice, strong growth, and more or less seeing that across the product portfolio. And so I would agree that the criticism that we're still relatively small, even though we've been doing this for a while, is an understandable criticism. I don't agree with it because the intricacies of our industry and the pace of regulatory action in our industry means that it takes a good long time to get a product authorized. And it's important that people understand that it's not so simple as we go to Italy, we register a product against one disease on one crop, and then suddenly we can sell it everywhere in Italy. It's not the case at all. So when we get authorization, initially we had authorization to treat a disease called botrytis on grapes. That's one disease, one crop. Right now, it's an important disease, and it can cause havoc for a grower if they get it, and they don't have great treatment solutions. But nevertheless, that's one product. What would have been really nice is if we can say, okay, fine, you can treat botrytis on every crop that gets botrytis, but that's not how it works. In order for us to then get approval to sell the same product against the same disease on a different crop, particularly if it's a major crop, we've got to go through the whole regulatory process again in what's called a label extension. So you can see as a nano cap, thinly funded, let's say historically anyway, company with limited resource available to us, we didn't have the luxury of doing what a Syngenta might do. If Syngenta had a product like Methylone when it was originally developed, they would have gone global. They would have done it across a whole spectrum of crops. They would have had all the data in-house. They would have run hundreds, if not thousands, of trials to support that regulatory approval. And they would have done it all at once. And so when the product was launched, rather than looking at 30-40% growth every year over year from a very small base, that baby would have been born fully grown, if you will, or damn close to fully grown. Whereas, we've got to fight and claw our way. Now, we've been very fortunate over the course of the last 5 years. We've had some outstanding institutional investors come on board. We have finally been reasonably well funded over the course of the last 5 years, and we're making a lot of progress on the back of that. We're investing those funds to broaden our product portfolio, to broaden the labels for each of those products, to engage in new partnerships, and to pursue new registrations elsewhere in the world where there are some really substantial and, as of yet for us, untapped markets.
I guess I did say last question, but I have got another one on top of that.
Okay.
Just on your outlook, they've got this quote here, talking about your revenue for 2025. You're saying it could be much higher than you think based on potentially significant approvals and other events that could, subject to timing, increase this figure. That's very Sir Humphrey of you, that wording.
Yeah.
But is there anything you could, potentially let us know, like a roast exclusive, something potentially that you hoping to come through the pipeline in the next couple of months?
Well, obviously, I
Maybe
can't
not.
say
Maybe
something.
not.
Wait a
No
minute,
matter
Yeah.
how
you're
you.
sounding like Kev now. Have you started? Is he rubbing off on you a bit?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, a
I
little,
tell
a
you
little.
that
You got
that was my next question, and you
love it,
stole
love
it.
it. Sorry, Kev. Right,
I'd love
I'll
to.
let you deal with it from now on, Kev. I'll go silent now.
Yeah, I'd love to give you one of those. Absolutely, trust me. But obviously, I like my job a lot, and I would like to keep it. Yeah, no, there are a few things. I mean, just to talk about those, and we touched on that in the trading update. But to give you some example, forecasting in an industry like this that's emerging, that is highly dependent upon the pace of regulatory action, you might imagine is a nightmare. And we do our best to get it right. But to be frank with you, we really want to err on the side of showing investors what the realistic path looks like, what kind of a base case path looks like, but
So,
giving them.
Sean, I'm going to ask you a different question because you're just being a politician at this moment in time, and I understand why you are.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, but I'm going to ask you the stuff that could be game changing, which was basically what you had written in your report. I think is that you could have a step change in your revenue, and then I presume exponential growth after that as well. Is this in one of the products that already exists?
Yes.
But now
Yeah.
we're talking about new territories.
Yeah. So
So,
we give an example, and fair play. I guess it's called the roast for a reason, right? So
yeah.
I can take the harder questions. It's not a problem. Ecovalex is a great example. So this is our seed treatment, and I think I said that we've got 2.1 products. The point one is Ecovalex, which will be at the time it's launched potentially our largest product, right? Up to that point anyway. And by the way, the pipeline is quite interesting with some other opportunities such as our insecticide. With Ecovalex, the seed treatment, Once we get that authorization and we get it across the EU, we are in a position to add substantially to our revenue figure. Okay. So the number that we're putting out there, I'm just going to talk in bold terms, is roughly 4 million for that one product by itself at maturity, which should take place within 2 to 3 years. So give or take a little bit. It's difficult to anticipate this. So that one, we believe that it is possible that we'll have that authorization from the rapporteur member state around mid-year, July or so, something like that. It's very hard to predict that, but
Yeah, it's hard to
we,
say, but you expect that within 2025 anyway. That's the reality of the
we
situation.
do. And then depending upon when that happens, Kevin, and I think this is the important bit here, depending upon when that happens, there has to be some subsequent regulatory action. In other words, member states need to also grant their authorizations. That can take very little time or it can take a lot of time. It depends. But if it happens at the right time, in other words, we get the meaningful member states across the line with the approvals that we need to be able to treat seeds and plant them in the EU. If it happens in good enough time, we should see substantial revenue in 25, right? So we forecast
Yeah,
some
and that's for the
already.
planting season that will happen in 26, but you
That's
will
right.
treat the seeds in 25.
That's right. That's right.
Now my next question is, as you said, I'm roasting you. That will allow you to become cash flow positive even with what you invest. Would that be the case or not?
No, we've not said that because at the end of the day, the answer to the question is very much around when does it happen and how much of that can we realize. If it happened and we got a good run at the full season, we will be there or thereabouts. Let me put it that way.
Okay, so then the cash burn would stop, and that cash burn would then. I mean, you do have quite a lot of cash. You were sort of undermining yourself, but for a nano cap, you do have quite a lot of cash. So there is no issues with having to raise, wanting to raise, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But I
Well, we
suppose the question is, will that free you up to actually accelerate the programs much quicker? And we could be talking about, exponential annual doubling of revenues if things start to actually do, well from that point on, or am I just over egging it?
No, I mean, look, it's you'll appreciate that it's a bit of a minefield to wade into those kinds of questions in that way. So, without sounding too much like a politician, what I'll say to you is that, as we begin to build momentum around products like EcoVelix, that gives us a lot more latitude to invest more, which will ultimately accelerate the pace of growth. Now, what I would tell you is if it, and I'm just to make up some numbers, if it costs you £100,000, which it doesn't, it costs far more, but to get a product approved, for example, and you spend £200,000, again, making these numbers up, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go any more quickly. But what it does mean, if you've got 200,000 to spend instead of 100,000 to spend, is that you spend 100,000 on one project and 100,000 on another, and you've got two opportunities in the mix. And that's been the one. A good number of years ago, one of the fund managers, I won't say who, but he made the comment to our chairman, who we've always liked this comment. We're one of the very few companies, this individual said, that he sees that has more opportunities than cash. And I really firmly believe that. But we have to be able to invest in each of these opportunities. And what you're seeing for the last 5 years is the benefit of that. So 5 years ago, when we raised 10.4 million pounds and closed that transaction the day before the lockdown started in a very empty London, which was quite bizarre and all by itself, we began investing very heavily in EcoValix. We began investing in the insecticide. And from that point, literally just 5 years ago, the team went from a team of two people, myself and our CFO, Alex, to a team of today about 25 people. So what does that allow us to do? It's allowed us to develop EcoValix because before then we didn't have EcoValix. It's allowed us to develop the insecticide because before then we didn't have an insecticide. It's allowed us to look at things like significant, meaningful label expansions for entirely new markets, for even existing products. Without those investments, we wouldn't be here. And there's a very long list of additional opportunities exactly like that. I mentioned late blight on potato. Everybody's heard the story about the potato famine. That was caused by late blight. Guess what? Late blight never went away, but it was controlled by a product that's relatively recently been removed from the market. And Charles, if you're familiar with potato farming at all, I don't know if that's where your background.
Beef, sadly, generally,
Oh,
but
sorry.
yeah, a
Yeah,
few
well,
crops, a
no.
bit of potato farm. We watched
No, I
Clarkson's
prefer beef to
farm. I think
potatoes,
that's
to be honest with you. So,
Yeah.
that's
Well, while
okay.
we're on the subject of beef now, I mean, this is my final question. It's the Sunday roast. What is your perfect Sunday roast?
My perfect Sunday roast. Okay, you might have worked out that I'm not from here, so I'm American. So I always have this debate about what's appropriate and what's inappropriate for a Sunday roast. But I will say this: definitely some nice rare roast beef. I love Yorkshire puddings as well. Roasted parsnips for me, absolutely great, and the gravy's got to be perfect. And everything else starts to get around. Roast potatoes. I don't know. I think it's hard to get a great roast potato. There are some.
It's
Always.
all about cooking them so they fall, and then you give them a shake and they go to almost powder, and then get the fat as hot as possible, beef dripping, and you get
yeah,
the crunchiest potato there
a little
ever.
bit of flour on them just before they
The
go in the
flour as
dressing
well,
as
if you
well.
want to
Can't
cheat,
forget
yeah,
that.
with the
I'm
fluff in,
I'm
yeah,
I'm
that's
now
good.
going to admit to having watched substantially more than one YouTube video on this very topic. So I don't want to put myself in the category of sad people, but I have watched a few videos along this line.
Brilliant.
And a glass of red wine with the obviously the grapes have been treated by your product.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's a good number of them now where the grapes have been treated by our product. This is quite nice to be able to say, yeah, hey, this particular vintage of this particular wine, yeah, it's been treated with Mevalon. I mean, the product is, and I'm going to say this, and we haven't really talked about this very much. We are okay. Our products aren't as sexy as a nice new iPhone or a nice new car or what have you, but we're still a product-based business. So we can talk a lot about the technology. Having good products that work, that farmers like or love, is really important. And it's probably easy to overlook that fact. One of the things that really gets me excited is when we go on field visits and to every single time the growers say to us, this is a great product. We love this product. These products are doing an amazing job for us. They work really well. And I've just had a call, I won't say with which one, but one of our major distribution partners in a very major market where we're just getting feedback from the 24 season. And they were all, yeah, normally your distributors want to tell you that your prices are too high, your deliveries are too slow, your this is wrong and that's wrong and whatever, what have you. And oh, by the way, the weather wasn't great. And long list of bitches and moans. These guys were all grins and all saying how fantastic the product had done in basically what was its first season. So people can start working out which territory that was. But in any case, yeah, they were very happy with the product.
Very good. Well, it's been great hearing your insights, Sean, and we do say thank you for appearing on the Sunday Roast. So Sean Smith, CEO of Eden Research, thanks very much for your time.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sean.
Bye.
Now, it's been a while, but we're delighted to be joined again by James Short, CEO of Celadon Pharmaceuticals, a company at the forefront of developing cannabis-based medicines. Celadon recently announced a major milestone, a strategic collaboration with Danish pharma company Valeos Pharma, enabling the acceleration of EU GMP cannabis API supply. This partnership underpins their German medicinal cannabis contract, projected to generate up to £26 million over 3 years. With Valeos' state-of-the-art facility now operational and Celadon's proprietary genetics in play, the company is well positioned to meet Europe's growing demand for high THC medicinal cannabis while expanding its footprint across the continent. We'll be discussing the significance of this partnership, the path forward for Celadon, and what this means for patients and investors alike. So, welcome back to the podcast, Jim. How's things?
Very well, thank you.
Absolutely.
And Happy New Year. I don't think I've wished you Happy New Year.
Yeah. I mean, it's always one of those, isn't it? Is it, what are we on the sort of like, the 19th, and you always wonder to yourself, is it too late in the year to say that? But no, we've not spoken really. So yeah, did you have a good Christmas and New Year?
Yeah, it was okay. It was quiet. I was trying to get away, but I didn't. And then I ended up with this lurgy that everybody seems to have got. So I booked 4 days off and I was in bed for 3 of them. So hey,
Well, not a bad use of.
the luxury of being a CEO of an AIM-listed company.
Hey, 40 years ago, Jim, you would have been very happy with that outcome.
I would actually.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that great news, obviously, in the week. I mean, just talk us through the latest news with Valeos and, what it means for the European operation.
Yeah, it is really good news. But, what I'd like to get over is, we've been working on this transaction for well over a year. And as you know, we did an RNS back end of last year that we did a joint venture with a Danish company called Valeos. And in essence, it's a tech transfer. They're using our technology that we've developed over 4 years that ties in with how we produce product and our genetics, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the fundamental advantages to ourselves is it gives us access to helping us with our sales in Europe. So it means we don't have to use our UK product and ship it from the UK to Europe. What we can do is our UK product, sell it into UK, and our European contracts we can produce in Valeos with our know-how and genetic and sell that into the European contract. And this recent RNS was a pull from the market saying, look, how's it going with your Danish deal? So that's why, one of the other reasons why we put an RNS out, to give the market an update that actually we're now starting to get revenue from it, which is the key to all of this, isn't it? It's all right selling them something, but can we make money? And we're starting to get revenue. So it's a big milestone, really. I can't say I'll be putting an RNS out for everything we sell, Tesco's don't put an RNS out every time they sell carrots or whatever, but it's a fundamental milestone to say that is now starting to take position, which is really good. It's really good. Good for the team, good for everybody.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if we look back on 2024, I always like to reflect back. I mean, it's been quite there's been some significant milestones there for the company. Obviously, in March 24, the company received the GMP, the Good Manufacturing Practice registration from MHRA. Obviously, we've seen the Danish, Valeos deal there, which we just alluded to. There was a couple of fundraisers there, and we can talk about those later. And then there's obviously, the contract win there that I just alluded to. Taking the potential order book for Celadon up to sort of circa 40.7 million, combined obviously with the group's 26 million. But just talk us through, how busy a year 2024 was for Celadon, Jim.
I'm bound to say it was a very busy year, which it was. It was busy from all angles, dealing with the way the markets are. We were looking at raising further capital, and we had some really good offers, but I say really good, they're very expensive. I do feel money's getting a little bit cheaper now, or more to the point, money's coming back into the market, which is good. Now, whether that's a combination of us moving forward with the business and getting to revenue, I don't know. So that's positive. But it was a very, very busy 2024. But a lot of work we did in 2024 will start coming to fruition in 2026, ironically. We are always 2 years in front, if not more. So like this Valeos thing, that was nearly 2 years ago. It's just the way it is. But it was a great year. And I'm not about to say it was a great year. It was a tough year for everybody, not just us. But we were delivering on our milestones. And as you said, that GMP really helped. Because what people don't realise, we could produce the products as you guys seen when you come to the facility, but I couldn't sell it until I got my license to sell it. And by getting that license, it now allows us to sell it. So we're now starting to deliver on our contracts to the UK companies. We're starting to get revenue there, and then the Valeos one. So as the business, I'm really happy with it. Honestly, I'm really. I know the markets are bad and. People want to see £3 a share, which is what I wanted to see. But business-wise, really good. We're really getting in the flow. It's like a machine now. It literally is. Every 3 weeks, harvest, sell. It's like a machine. We had a couple of bumps with testing labs and things like that. We used third parties in Europe. We had issues with that. We've worked with a couple of companies in England now to get them accredited. Because, we've helped them with the regulators to get them accredited to start testing our stuff so that we can release it. So it's had its challenges, but we're always going to have challenges. We'll have this call next year, and there'll be different life's challenges, which is good. And every new market is even more challenges, but we're smashing it. Our guys are, you've been.
Yeah,
you've seen it. It's like
an amazing operation. It really is. Just before Kev comes in, I want to just ask quickly about the LVL, the NHS trials. Can you just give us an update on how things are going there, Jim? Because it's been a while since we talked about that.
Yeah, so as a recap, the regulator asked us to go and do a 3 months, we call it a beta test. So we did with 100 patients, and we announced that with some fantastic results. We actually got York University to look at our results because Nobody may have believed us. So we got York, they did it. We announced that whenever it was on an RNS. What we've been doing in last year is we've been looking at what did we learn from that 3-month study and just getting all the, like IT back end, what staff do we need? So this year, at some point, we'd like to launch that properly for the 5,000 patients. Ironically, I was interviewing a potential MD for that business this morning. So we're getting ready to get in a position to launch that. That is going to be a game changer for the UK. One of the challenges we've had is having enough product for it. This is 5,000 patients. This is over a ton of product. So we've had to work with partners just so that we've got resilience as well in case we have a blip with our product. So we're very excited with it. The market wants it. Patients wants it. Some of the patients that were on it originally for 3 months are still on the product. So it tells us it's working. I know it's working because I speak to the patients. But, watch this space. We want to try and get it launched this year. We've got a number of potential partner/investors that want to partner with us when we launch it. And I can't really say much more about that, but we're ready to go.
So, Jim, obviously the share price has been a disaster. It created basically because people thought that you needed cash and therefore we're going to be in a lot of trouble. This 8.7 million per annum from the Danish contract stroke German contract and what you're producing in the UK, is this going to be sufficient to cover your fixed costs and your overall running of the business going forward?
It will if we stay stagnant.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, the next question. I just really want to know, does it cover Celadon as we see it now? Obviously it needs to grow, but...
Exactly. Well, it's a bit hard because it doesn't cover it from day one. So where it really start kicking in is probably mid-year when we start really catching up. So that's where it'll help. But it's sort of stagnant because we've got so much going on. We're very focused. We don't take lots of opportunities in. And this is why I'd like to potentially raise more capital to keep that barrier that we've got to market, to keep that moat that we've created.
Yeah, and explain why you think there is a moat there.
I think we're sort of 2 to 3 years ahead of where any competitors potentially is where we're at. In any business, and you look at this throughout majority of business, when you've got something new, or you're launching something new, you typically have about a 2-year advantage. Jeff Bezos is famous at saying typically it's 2 years, but with cloud service, he was 7 years in front. And we feel we're probably 3 to 4. I always used to say 2 years, but people around us say actually we're 4 years because that's how long it takes you to get licenses. So I just feel we want to keep on that track and keep going. So I don't want to take money in at any cost. We have got offers of money. I could shut most of investors up that are worried about money tomorrow and just sign one of them facilities. We've got potential, but it's too expensive. And I won't do it at any cost. And that's why we did the Valeos deal. So I don't have to go and take dear money in. All right, we're a bit slower. It takes a bit longer, but it means I get revenue through the Valeos deal more, same as our phase 1. But it means I don't have to take expensive money in today. And I've always been nervous of taking too dear money. Because if I do, then I'll have the shareholders saying, oh, you were a bloody idiot. That was expensive. Why did you do that? From an equity point of view and a debt point of view. So it's always a balance.
Yeah. And okay. So looking forward to 2025, what else can you see on the horizon? Is there going to be more deals like this Valeos one? Not obviously the same, but are we going to expand?
Oh yeah.
If you had a crystal ball, and you've obviously got to be careful what you say, but you had a crystal ball and you look in January 2026, what factor of revenue increase would you like to see in terms of stuff?
If I answered that honestly, our nomad would resign. So
okay,
I don't mean honestly. I can't bring you inside on that, but all I can say is we've got 2 very similar deals to Valeos on the drawing board at the moment with 2 different companies. We've actually got somebody in a different country at the moment that works for us that's working through that. So we've got 2 other Valeos potential deals. Whether we get both of them, I don't know, over the line. We've got that, and we've got a couple of products that we have been putting through beta last year that we're ready to launch this year as well. And these products actually allow us to get to more revenue without me even producing product in-house, because we've gone to a UK contract manufacturer to manufacture the product for us. So it's me creating that resilience in the business.
Okay, something that's close to my heart. How have the progress of the autism trials gone?
So phase one, they had successful phase one. This is Kingdom Therapeutics, as you know, and we own a share in that. And if that trial's successful, they have to use our product. So phase one's great. Phase two's ready to go. Fortunately or unfortunately, they're going to run their phase two in Australia. They're not going to do it in the UK because of time, legislation, costs. So they're out raising capital at the minute. They've got an anchor investor there. Again, I can't say too much because it's a subsidiary, but really pleased with that. It's a shame. I think they've been delayed again. I'm not kicking the UK government, but they've lost probably 9 months because of regulators, and that's why they're going to Australia to do the phase two. It's such a shame. We're going to lose that in the UK. It's a shame.
I think you should kick the regulators, even though you can't.
It's hard because they've got a job to do. We've just wrapped ourselves in red. And I'll give you a very quick example. You've got to get what's called ethics committee approval as one of your things when you're doing a trial. And they've been talking to them for over 12 months and still haven't got approval in the UK. It took them 2 weeks in Australia.
Yeah.
Now, and it's not just time, it's money, because you've got to pay consultants, you've got to pay this, that. Yeah. It's frustrating. And let's strip this back. Who's suffering really here? It's the patients. It's the poor people that need the bloody product. That's the bit that winds me up. That's the bit that keeps me coming in every day. Yeah, it's revenue and people. I've been criticised, and Kevin, we've said this a lot of times on the chats and that. I'm criticised where people say, when's Jim going to stop treating this as a charity? Well, it's not a bloody charity. I've never had a charity. It's a commercial business. But at the end of the day, it's the customers that we're serving. If I get it right with them, we'll make a lot of money.
Yeah, Jim, the scenario is that the government or these bodies think that there is no after effect, but actually the Chancellor is going to lose out here because that trial is going to be done in Australia, and they're going to pay significant amount of taxes and also produce revenue for people in Australia that they're then going to use to go into their economy, which we're not now in the UK.
It's all about shaking the stigma as well as around cannabis. That's one of the biggest hurdles for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is. The ex-founder of GW was on a podcast yesterday, and I've got a meeting with him next week. And he goes on to say that the stigma needs to go. We need to do these trials. We need to get it. It needs to get going. And Australia's opened up to it. But even without cannabis, trust me, the system in the UK is broken. If you just went with a new molecule that is not even nothing to do with cannabis, it's still too slow. It's too slow, and it's the regulators are over red taped and they're understaffed, and it's just there's nobody shaking a stick at them. There's nobody shaking a stick. And I keep saying to people, I always used to say, within our financial model, I used to say we're probably about 3 months delayed. So we allowed for that in case. I think we're 18 months delayed from where I wanted my plan when I set this business. Now, 18 months when you've got a burn rate of X, it's not in your model. So you go, okay, well, we'll go back to the market for the money. Now you go back to the market for the money, and then the market's not there because it's on its arse. So it's a circle. We need this circle. Something needs to happen.
Well, I swear it's funny. Literally this morning, I didn't know I was going to talk to you today. I did an article on Substack about the Australian system and how much better it is for small caps than what we have in London, and whether we should just copy what they're doing because they seem to be doing it a lot better. I mean, in terms of we've got with this big contract you've just done, you're signing 3 tons of annual cultivation capacity. What's your max production that you can do out of the facilities at the moment, would you say?
It was 2023, weren't it, when we announced the German contract? We wanted to supply to it in 2024, but we couldn't supply to it whole because we didn't have the capacity in England because we needed to raise more money, blah, blah, blah. And this is why we did the Valeos deal, Charles, to actually unblock that issue. So in answer to your question, now the group with the Danish one, we've got capacity now to produce probably up to 40, 50 million pounds worth of revenue. Now, we won't get all of that because we have to share some of that with Valeos.
Yeah.
Because of the way the deal
is structured. Yeah.
Yeah, but we have got capacity now. We've got more capacity. I say the group because I look at them as part of us now, even though we're not equity holders in them.
Yeah. Well, your your fortunes are aligned now, aren't they? Regardless of the way the equity is structured.
Yeah.
And I guess if I don't know, despite the best efforts of the government, it seems interest rates are probably going to start coming down over the next sort of 12, 18 months. I guess that's going to help you guys a lot, because at some point you're going to want to expand, aren't you? And
Yes.
possibly take on more debt. And
Yes.
and you can't really do that in this environment, can you?
No, it's very difficult. If likes of companies that have been going 50 years with profit and everything are struggling getting debt, or ostensible debt, there's not.
Well, I think,
but it's changing.
Yeah,
honestly,
I think
it's coming back.
It must also be, well, I don't know actually. I say it must. No, this is why I'm asking you. I guess with cannabis in particular, in the US, it's a little bit easier. But in the UK, cannabis is, for some reason, it's designated as a Class B drug, even though it's incredibly commonly used recreationally. And obviously, that's not what it's medicinal cannabis is what you're doing. But is it hard to get banks and like traditional lenders to lend you money because of the industry you're in? Or would you say it's getting easier now?
Ironically, Charles, it's harder to get debt in America for American cannabis companies because it's not federally legal.
Oh, yeah.
So it's harder in America to get debt, ironically, because you can't even get a bank account in America because it's not federally legal. Wow. So in the UK, once you get on that trajectory, i.e. get a bank account, get Proceeds of Crime Act, you can have sensible conversations with banks. But it's took us 8 years.
Yeah. Well, that's the regulation. It kills you, doesn't it? Like every small cap company, it's just your. I mean, when a company wants to list, right, just an IPO, and you have a prospectus that's hundreds of pages long, none of the investors are reading more than like 2 of those pages. Being realistic.
No, and it's such a shame because one of the reasons we went onto the market was to show that we are investable, and what I mean from that is from a Proceeds of Crime Act, and a regulatory. But when you talk to investors and things like that, they go, yeah, but it's only in. But when I then show them what we had to go through, they were like, flipping heck. It's like, geez, even the US guys, I speak to the US, like BlackRock's and K, they look at it as, they call it a Mickey Mouse exchange. I said, and when I walk them through it, they're like, God and Bennett, they put you through the rigor, and they have. So
yeah, well, I've got tons of private equity companies that want to list and just they look at it. It's kind of like I recently moved house, and you know that you need to do it, but you look at the effort you have to go to. You go, you know what? We'll just put it off for another year or two.
Yeah,
but I guess this contract you have with Valeos, obviously it's transformative. The share price, it is massively improved since this morning. Do you reckon it could grow financially? I mean, you're talking 26 million over 3 years. Do you reckon it could become more? Year after
without
it goes well?
Yeah, because it's Valeos is a bit similar to us. We have a phase 1, they have a phase 1, they've got a phase 2 for expansion. So when we start eating this and they go into their second part of their expansion, it'll double because they've got 3 ton capacity when we go in, and now they'll have 6 ton when they go to their phase 2.
Yeah.
So so it'll expand, but where the real expansion will come is what Kevin picked on before. Is there other deals like Valeos? Well, we've got 2 on the cards in different countries. So all of a sudden, I've doubled, potentially, even that accessibility without having to spend a lot of CapEx. But the fundamental change, Charles, is, and not a lot of people have spotted this, we've developed IP over this period of 5-6 years. And it's that Valeos are tapping into. And it's that we are now, hopefully, winning the fruits of our rewards of what we've developed over them years.
Yeah.
All right, you're not really going to see it overnight, and we haven't, but it's now coming. We got this in. We're starting to get revenue because of what we did over the past 4 to 5 years of developing that IP. Had we not have done that, Valeos wouldn't have done a deal with us because they didn't need us.
I guess that's true. I guess the only question then is you were talking about an economic moat. How hard or easy is it for people to copy what you're doing? To take out a warehouse, develop their own IP that's similar, or is it very, very difficult? I don't know. It's not something that I'm an expert in at all.
It's difficult, but it can be copied. Anything can be copied. Let's not, anything can be copied. But even though I always say it took 4 to 5 years, some of our operators, our IT operators, our scientists, our growers, they've probably got 100 years of experience between the crowd of them. So you've got that to take into account. All right, somebody might come and headhunt them, but they're not going to headhunt them all because of what we've got with it. But and if they do, we've got the IP internally. We're not patenting it because it's like the Coca-Cola thing. We want to keep it.
Secret ingredients, as you say, yeah.
Just two people with one key to the safe, yeah.
Yeah, Phil's seen it. Phil's seen the level that we are producing. And I say our plants drink far better than we drink. Well, that won't be hard. Well, what authority is at the minute, but you know, it's very technical. There's a lots of moving parts that we've developed within that particular part of the business.
Yeah, I guess.
And I think the one thing that we really haven't touched on, and we need to, is that Celadon, just like it says behind you, even though people won't be able to see that, Celadon Pharmaceuticals, you are a pharma company.
Yeah.
The reality is that you will get to become a pharma company by the sale, also the growth and sale of some of these products. But down the line, you're going to have everybody and his dog growing your patents on the set, or not patents, as you said, your IP on the product. So, you know, the reality is you could be producing 100 tons of this stuff, and you know, you'll be able to do that from your facility there, because the reality is that everybody else will just be growers, but you'll be producing the IP. And then, you know, I mean, if you look at the scalability of this from the point of view of even pain relief in the United Kingdom, 5,000 is like it's probably one town, maybe, if you're lucky.
There's 7 million people on the NHS getting prescriptions today with chronic pain. 7 million.
Yeah.
We need tons and tons of the product. So what I don't want to do is end up having a capital intensive business. So we said, let's develop IP that we can have partners that want to go and make money and use our IP, and then we can sell that product into the market collectively. How do I scale? I don't want to have to build hundreds and hundreds of buildings. Let's get partners. And by the way, this isn't new. This Rockefeller did it way back. You know, it's just the Rockefeller model. You know, let's own the bit in the middle and let people fetch their oil to him, and he refined it. And lo and behold, he sold it into them. It's the same model.
Yeah.
I just don't want a big capital intense business. I didn't want to have to keep borrowing 100 million to build a building. I want other people to do it, and they take part of that risk, and we do an IP transfer. But to be able to get to that, Kevin, you have to go and prove your story first. And that's
which I think now, in all honesty, that's what you've done, but only in one thing. So this is the thing, that though the market is very big, and as you say, probably you cannot produce it yourself by any stretch of the imagination. We talked about the pain relief. We talked about the autism trials. There are a few more, if not many more, different uses for this product, this pharmaceutical product. And
I'm not going to let it out. I know you're trying to tempt me to let it out what we've got.
I'm not asking. People need to understand that you haven't been sitting on your hands. Things have been being developed, and not just the pain relief and not just the autism. So there are other strains of stuff that is going to help, you know, multitudes of different people. And, you know, I think that's what's exciting. I think hopefully people will start to realize, once this financial situation is behind you, which I think today, or not today, but the news this week has been the first step, then people will start to see the real value in this, because valued as a pharma company with the IP you've got, you've got to be worth hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I've got some stats here, because I actually did an article on Celadon a few years ago. But so back in November 2018, Theresa May changed the law to allow the NHS and private providers to prescribe cannabis-based medical products for epilepsy sufferers, right? But here's the problem. So between November 2018 and July 2022, there were just over 89,000 prescriptions for cannabis medicines, but only literally five, were issued by the NHS. Because while they've licensed about 11,000 products, patients can only get access to these products through private doctors, right? Most people don't have a private doctor. And so it seems to me that, you know, the longer term investment case is if Celadon develops a treatment that the NHS can prescribe,
Yeah.
And more widely in Europe, US, etc. And then the scaling, that's the point at which the share price rockets and everyone makes loads of money while you do the bread and butter stuff.
Yeah, and that story, Charles, has been played out by another company, which you're probably aware of, which was GW Pharma.
Yeah.
So, they went from 50 million market cap, they dual listed, went to 1.6, they traded around 4 billion, and they sold out for 7.2 billion, and they had one licensed product.
Yep.
So
and that's what attracted me to it years ago, so
yeah, so it's
story's still there.
I'm not clever enough to invent something new. I just look at what's there and how can I do it faster, better, and more efficient. That's how it is, and that plays out in lots of businesses, and that's what we're doing. We're saying, I look at it as the BlackBerry and the smartphone. BlackBerry with GW, we're the smartphone. We just got to show people it, and that's where we're at. And to Kevin's point around new products, we have been developing new products that actually do not rely on us growing a plant even in our facility.
Don't say any more, Jem. Don't say any more.
Yeah. I hope you've got the IP and trademark on that one, mate.
No, you can literally see like nomad, like blaring in the red.
It's like the QR
and I won't go any further with it. But what I'm saying is, it's about, there's the market, we're in it. Yes, we've got that stigma of cannabis still, but it's about us keep breaking the barrier, keep sticking to our values, and keep going. It's it's tough, but everything, life's tough.
It's always darkest before the dawn.
Life's tough, but so's Jim. So get in there.
Very good.
Good. Well, I guess we've done it right there. Obviously, we just want to say, James Short, CEO of Celadon Pharmaceuticals, thanks very much for appearing on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on again, lads. Looking forward to this year, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
All the best. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so let's have a look at some of the movers and shakers of the week. The best mover, does anybody want a 15-bagger? Because there was one this week. We saw a 1,500% increase in a company called Finu. They're a bank. The ticker is actually Bank. They signed a non-binding head of terms with an independent UK bank for its first white label banking as a service deal, featuring its AI-driven plug-in overdraft product. The partnership includes integrating the platform into the bank's systems with plans to launch in Q4 2025. The agreement is subject to regulatory approvals, finalising service agreements and system testing, with a 12-month exclusivity period in the UK for the go-live date. Finu will earn royalties from the bank's audited profits, and CEO Dr. Mark Schbaum highlighted the strategic significance of the collaboration, showcasing Finu's proprietary AI technology and its potential to revolutionise banking. Further updates to follow. So yeah, it's great to see these ones, isn't it? It must have been a relatively small cap if it's done 1,500, but it looks like AI technology for this plug-in overdraft. What do you make of that one, Charles?
I'll tell you what I make of it. I've written a couple of articles on it back in February 2023, where I have sort of I think it's like a 9.5p buy-in price. I still have those shares. So this rise has almost brought me back in black. It was expected
because it was trading at 0.6p, wasn't it, earlier in the week?
I never expected it to return. I haven't said anything because I don't want, people going, oh, you said it this time. Like, if it goes back into the blue, it'll be the best story ever. But it's sort of, things obviously went to pot for various reasons over there. But this is the thing, with so many of these small caps, and we've seen so many really, really good rises over the past week, like multi-bags. You just get the sense, okay, yes, each of these companies have had a catalyst that's, propelled them higher. But over 2023 and 2024, when these catalysts came, you get a 10% rise and then just fizzled out. But you're seeing it now in 2025. So many companies are coming with the catalyst and they're actually getting proper liquidity and a proper rise. And it's so amazing to see it, because hopefully it heralds a year where we're actually all starting to make a decent amount of money. That's the hope, the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other one that did well this week was Blue Star Capital. They were up 200%. They did actually issue an RNS on the Monday stating we know of no reason for the share price rise, and they referred back to a previous RNS that related to capital reorganization and subscription. But there was actually earlier in the week there were some holdings RNSs that came out, and it looks like Nicholas Slater has upped his position from about 11.6% to 13%. 7%, plus a couple of other institutional investors as well have also taken the position for actually newcomers from 0 to 8.3%. So yeah, it's good to see stocks moving, as you say, on the week there. There's been Celadon Capital are up 140%, Quantum Blockchain up 120. So it's good to see some movers. Anything else on your radar? Any significant news items you want to talk about?
Significant news items. I mean, not particularly. It's been sort of quiet over the past sort of 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, a lot of the ones like the junior resource space, Arc Minerals, Rome Resources, waiting for essays. Guardian Metal, we're waiting for grant funding. Jubilee Metals actually has had a little bit of a recovery, which has been quite pleasant to watch. AMRQ Minerals is shooting up to record highs, but again, I think a lot of them we're just kind of waiting for news, aren't we? It's all. I really hope it's not all going to come on the same day, but you know how it goes. It always does.
The Guardian Metal Resources news on Monday was transformational, and yet it didn't really impact it with the garnets.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I
On
mean,
Monday.
they have enough garnet to supply the entire continental United States, assuming it's economically viable, which it looks like it is. And the other thing that people haven't picked up on is that the type of garnet that they've discovered. And I briefly discussed this with Oliver, but he doesn't want to talk about it yet. So, but the type of garnet they've discovered is potentially is a jewelry type. So potentially some of it could be jewelry grade, which could be a lot more profitable than the industrial. Early days, obviously with that as well. But we need the grant funding to come through, and I think based on what we know, the publicly available information, it will be within the next few months, and definitely by the end of this half.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Through Vision are down 60%. That's the biggest sort of shaker of the week, and also PREM as well down. I've got notes on about sort of 30% down. But what's happening at PREM, Charles? That was always seemed to be the sort of retail favourite, but it just doesn't seem to deliver.
Well, it's the highest risk, highest reward stock on the market. Effectively, you're going without a definitive feasibility study with little funding to try and build a lithium plant. It hasn't helped that the lithium prices have crashed, which is a problem, for all lithium miners and explorers. But they've just raised, as much money as they can from London to keep the lights on and try and get the plant working. But they've been trying to do it for, a long old time. I think they were originally meant to be delivering in sort of March 2023. Now we're January 2025. I think it's one of those cases where I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, it's if the plant does eventually work, then maybe they could generate a profit and it'll be fine. But they may need more money by then. The question is, I'm trying to think of the words. The April 2025, their partner CanMax can take. They will be converting their debt that they hold over PREM into equity in Zulu, which is the plant. So you may find at that point there becomes more optionality. And you just have to wait till then. And if you're still, if you're a shareholder and the share price is now so low that you'll kind of have to just cross your fingers and put them in the bottom drawer. And it may be
well,
like
they tried to raise 3 million, didn't they? And they only got 1.2 million.
Wasn't it? Yeah. So
I mean, it is. Sorry for saying it, but it's shit or bust, isn't it? Really, to be honest.
Yeah, pretty much. I think if they can keep the lights on until April, that's then their last roll of the dice. At that point, we'll see what the cards lay out, and then that'll be that. But this is the thing with all of these kind of stocks. I mean, it's Carroll Minerals, building their lithium plant, and they're saying they're on the verge of production. They're in Mali, which is a huge jurisdictional risk, and there's plenty of others. I mean, this is the thing. If you're going to go down, high risk stocks, you're hoping for like a 20 times return, you might lose all your money. And they should never be, more than a reasonably small portion of your entire portfolio. Right, which is, for me personally, it's very sad because it was one which could have done really, really well. But a combination of, let's be honest, mismanagement and just mistake after mistake, and just we are where we are.
Talk about M&A, Charles, because I saw the news about there was, something, I don't know how reliable the source was, but it said that Glencore and Rio and talking about mergers and M&A and things. Just to give us a bit of insight into that.
Well, I think it was Bloomberg that Glencore and Rio Tinto are in the early stages of potential merger, and they came out and said yes, we had a chat for about 5 minutes and decided against it because those cultures would never mix. But and then obviously share prices shot up and they probably come back down again. And then like a day before we had talks about like Elon Musk potentially buying TikTok to keep it online because with this going out on Sunday, if nothing changes, TikTok will be banned in the United States, which is like a huge change to the creator culture and creator economy. And that obviously that wasn't happening. And then before that, they were talking about Mr. Beast the YouTube personality.
Yeah, I saw that Mr.
TikTok.
Beast buying
But it's all
TikTok.
nonsense, right? This is the thing. Like, it seems like these major, and I'm not some kind of like crazy whacked-on conspiracy theorist. It seems like a lot of these major news programs are putting out this information. The share prices or whatever shoot up.
Yeah.
They profit, and then the real news comes out, and then they sell out and they make their money.
Yeah.
There's probably some
well, it's
freelancer over there just sort of like, you know what? The calls on Rio Tinto today.
It's funny you mentioned that because at the time of recording, FTSE 100 bust through all-time highs around the 84, 90 mark. So do you think some of that has been pushed through from these articles? So you just don't know.
I mean, the other thing is I think the FTSE 100 could actually have a pretty good year this year because potentially of the American bubble burst, but just in general, if you're coming into investing now, right? And you say you've got 10 grand and you want to start investing somewhere and you haven't quite ventured into the small cap world yet. And I don't blame you because it's a scary place sometimes. But you look at the America and you look at the valuations of the S&P 500 at record highs. And then you look at gold and it's at record highs. And then you look at Bitcoin and it's at record highs. And then you look at the FTSE 100 and even the FTSE 250 actually and the smallest slash mid caps. And they all on fundamentals are undervalued. And every other day the British company seems to be taken out by private equity at a premium. And it looks like it's fairly good value. And then on top of that, I mean, even if you don't want to go just for a straight index, you go to a stock like Legal in General, which is a very good insurer. It's paying out a 9% dividend, and its stock has been stable for the past couple of years. There's well-run, decent companies on the FTSE that are just massively undervalued and underappreciated. But if you're coming to the market as a first-time participant, I mean, the other thing is obviously is that if you are new and you see a company that you see Tesco shares, it may not be the best stock to buy, but it's one Yeah. So I think FTSE could do well this year.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's talk Tech Mins. They had an announcement on the 13th stating that they are effectively in a contract there to recycle lithium-ion batteries from global automotive company. Under the terms of the contract, the recyclers will process hundreds of electric vehicle lithium-ion battery packs at the Wolverhampton industrial scale recycling facility, and the batteries will be sourced both domestically and internationally following a battery recall program by the customer, and represents recyclers' first contract for recycling batteries from overseas. So good to see an actual contract in place there. It seems like they're helping this big global automotive company there that's got issues or quality control problems with recall batteries. So fix the issue. But there's also an announcement as well, Kev. Do you want to just add a bit of colour to that related to the issue of shares?
Yeah, they've issued a whole load of shares, and it looks like from reading it that basically the CEO has sold those shares, Alex Danbury. This isn't the case. Basically, they've reached their headroom, so they can't issue any more stock as they announced with
under the FCA rules.
Deal, under the FCA rules. But there is an exemption for directors of the company to be able to issue more shares. So that's basically what they've done. Alex himself hasn't personally done anything. This is all through Tech Minerals. They've raised £250,000 and they've paid some of their debts off. So that was the other £198,000, which I think was for various different things, including interest, I think, for some of the loans that were outstanding. So just to put everybody in the picture, that's what's actually happened. They've reduced those costs.
Thus, the Stanbury's involvement here is effectively it's like a technical mechanism to enable the transaction, not a direct personal sale or gain.
Yes, correct. And also, they cannot issue any more stock now, so there will be no more stock on the market until they either tick past their 20% or they do some sort of prospectus or whatever. Which companies? If you look at Mast, they did the same thing. If you go back in history, but it was obviously it was a much smaller raise and a much smaller market cap, but they did exactly the same thing. Peter there at Mast did the same thing because their headroom was also gone. So we've seen sort of a reaction that, what's he doing? But it was more the wording of the RNS that got people into this situation. But this is actually what has physically happened. The company has issued the shares.
Good. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we wrap up?
We've seen the copper price spring up a bit, I think, in the last week. Seen it move up a fair amount. Moving from certainly since the new year, it's moved from around the £4 to now 444, which is like a pretty big move, 10% in copper. We've seen the dollar index continue to strengthen. It's around 109. Again, I keep going back to my mind was telling me about what Rick Rule was saying. It's like, why isn't the dollar crashing with such debt in the US, et cetera, et cetera? Well, his comment was it's probably the best of the worst, as in all the other currencies aren't any better. So, as the other currencies are tanking, including the British pound, because you're looking at British pound 122, 121. It reached as a low against the US dollar. And I suppose my comment is, how cheap are British companies to buy if you've got US dollars right now?
Incredibly cheap. Incredibly cheap.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. It's like a 90% off sale almost,
Yeah.
because the valuations themselves are very, very low. And now the dollar's at this sort of level. It's crazy. It's
We're going to
crazy
see
cheap.
tons and tons of private equity just buying out more and more British companies, especially if FTSE 250 level. It's just going to get more and more because I don't know. I just think that, our domestic. But then the thing is, right? It's funny because I was speaking to a couple of like international investors, and just said the thing is that the UK doesn't. We don't promote our own stock market at all, and we've created a list of rules and regulations and taxes and policies that are pretty much all designed to stop growth. And then, like, I did an article earlier this week about how the things that Australia does to kind of promote growth for its own capital market, stuff that we could easily be copying over here, but there just seems to be no desire to try to change it. It's very frustrating.
How are UK pension funds and ISAs and so on and so forth not stipulated that they have to invest a certain amount of money in the UK? They're getting tax benefits.
Because the problem is, and I'm not arguing against you, the issue that you have is that the core function of a pension fund is to ensure it has the money to pay out to the pensioners who are invested in it, right? And so what you want to do is you want to have a combination of capital growth and stable income. And what does that look like? Okay, so capital growth, you go to the US because that's where all the capital growth is. And that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy because if they go to the US to create some for capital growth.
No, but that's the question I'm asking is if you're saying you have to go to the US to get capital growth, then that is a factor of the fact that there's no liquidity within the UK to actually put that money in.
No, I know, but this is the problem is obviously is that if you then force them to go to the UK and they get low growth, they then can't pay out to the pensioners. I mean, for example, let's take like just one of the many things Australia does properly. Talk about sort of franking credits. Okay, so it's pretty simple. It's called the imputation system. We used to have something similar until 2016, until we got rid of it disastrously. And basically, you're allowed to attach franking credits to dividends. And the basic thing is that each shareholder will get a franking credit, which is equal to the corporation tax paid on their portion. Now, what this means is that, if you're paid like a 70 Australian cent dividend per share, you'll get a 30 Australian cent in credits, to offset against your personal tax liability. And it doesn't matter whether you're a pension fund or an individual, it forces companies operating in Australia to pay corporation tax in Australia, because if they don't, then the investors don't get that tax benefit. And maybe this is what we should do. Like, for example, you're talking about the ISA, maybe just say, well, the ISA can only be for UK listed stocks. For example, you could say that. But then regulating that would be a nightmare because, for example, let's say you're Scottish Mortgage, right, which is a FTSE 100 investment. I'm not sure it's FTSE 100 anymore, but investment trust. Say it owns shares in US-based stocks. How would you regulate that? Do you know? I don't know. I think it would be very tricky to do. But I do take your point. I do think we should be doing something to try and force the larger funds to invest in the UK. But the flip side of that is the UK actually needs to grow. I don't know. I don't know what the answers are. They're beyond me.
There are answers. I think the reality is that we have to be more make UK great again. And
You can get the hat made up, Kev. Get the hats
we
made up.
keep hearing all this rhetoric that
There is
we've got
the
to keep
MAGA
everything
hats.
in the
There is
US.
the make AIM great again, which I've seen. So maybe that.
But it's not just about AIM, as you say. It's about the United Kingdom and keeping the things. Because the thing that really hits me more than anything is that our tax base is being eroded through all of these companies being taken over, and their tax base will become somewhere else. Now, what does that do? That means we've got less money to spend on everything else, less money to spend on services, less money to help people if that's what we're going to do. So it's a roundabout. And when you've got a government or governments, because I'm not saying the Conservatives were any better, that are basically saying, no, no, we're going to look after the normal people. This is a fallacy because most of that money comes from the companies that we're getting, and we
Well,
have
this is
a
the problem,
huge
right?
amount of the UK tax base was based around London and the City of London. Very large percentage of it.
We have a problem now with the bonds and with for Rachel Reeves because the choices are to cut spending, which Labour will not want to do, or to raise taxes again, which Labour will not want to do. And if you raise taxes, you just suffocate the growth, and then the bond prices go up. So, but if you cut the spending, then you cut investing, especially in any kind of investing in infrastructure, you destroy the growth, and the bond prices are going to go up. So, but I think, we've got the highest tax burden in the UK since World War II. We've got an aging population. There are things we could do to turn it around, but the thing is, it's just I pay, I would say for myself, an incredible amount of tax. And yet I look around and like the amount they waste, 22 billion on carbon capture, 9 billion on the Chagos Islands, billions and billions sent overseas, billions just wasted on just nonsense, right?
They need economists running the country, not
They
sort
need
of.
Elon Musk. They need him to come in with a chainsaw. They need to have it in melee.
Okay,
Elon
so
Musk.
anybody watching anything decent? I know we talked briefly last week. I mean, you don't strike me as watching too much TV, Charles. You seem too busy for that.
Nah, I'm just renovating a house and working by and large. Just whenever I get physically tired, just sit in a chair and type, and I get mentally tired, pick up some bricks and build a new wall.
Yeah, and pick up a
Um,
bottle of whiskey. But I've
yeah.
got a couple. I've got a couple. One on Netflix, very quickly. The Breakthrough. It's based on a true story, tragic murder in Sweden, and it's about the breakthrough in the technology for DNA testing and the way that they swab people and they can basically identify the killer from DNA left. So that's a really interesting one. And then there's a movie, and Kevin and I spoke about this. It's the American Brian Johnson. It's called Don't Die: The Man Who Wants to Live Forever, and it's about
Oh,
biohacking and I mean, this guy
yeah.
spends $2 million on health, and he takes about 80 pills a day for it. He's in the gym an hour a day, and
Doesn't he?
he
Didn't
doesn't
he
eat.
have to give up one of them because it was actually making him age faster?
Yeah,
I think it's yeah. I mean, everyone wants to live forever, right? Or at least some people do. I don't think it's gonna work out. I wonder if it'll be like a Voldemort situation, right? Where in his attempt to live forever, he actually cuts his life short. And he could
yeah.
have lived to like 90 quite happily. He'll die at like 52
It's
or
like the
I,
guy
something.
who wrote
I
the
tell
two.
you what, I don't like the idea of death, but I don't want to live forever. If we
No,
have to
No,
do this
no.
forever,
Well,
then
that was
hopefully
funny.
faster.
I remember doing like I did PPE at university initially, and a philosophy question on my literally I think it was my second or maybe my third day. It said if you could choose not to be immortal, but you'll live this amount of years in good health, how many years would you pick? Right?
mm,
But you can't change your mind. So when you walk out of this room, if you pick like 10,000 years, you will live 10,000 years in good health. But you could get buried by a volcano, but you've got 5,000 years left buried. How many years would you pick? So I picked 500 because I think that's the max I could tolerate and enjoy. But obviously,
yeah.
people around you will die and stuff. How many years would you pick? What about you,
No,
Phil?
I think I
I don't
wouldn't
know.
pick more than 90 to 100 years.
Yeah, I think you're
Interesting.
right because like the whole Highlander thing, which is effectively what it is, like that who wants to live forever. Like it's depressing when he goes back and he sees his wife who's like an aging, or he goes back and his kids have he's survived his kids, and you
Don't
just
don't get attached to anybody and enjoy
no,
the
no. I
compound
suppose
interest. That's what I would do.
it
Put 50
reminds
quid
me of
Enjoy the compound interest. If this happens, the stock market could be dead and buried within 60 years.
if you
500 years from now, do you reckon there'll be a stock market? Here's a question
Well,
for
I
you.
don't know. There'll be one stock. Would you like to die? We're trying to figure it out. Raising
Yeah, there'll be
seeds,
one
nothing.
stock. There'll be one stock. No, I mean, stock markets only began 100 years ago or
Yeah,
120, 30 years ago.
wasn't that
So
long ago.
in the
No, no.
grand existence and scheme of things, it's like no, no. And I think a lot depends also on faith as well, because our faith believes we're going to go somewhere else, which is actually better than this. And lots of world faiths believe that. So yeah,
I don't know
no,
though, because
the
every
story
world,
you say.
well,
No, say this.
every major world faith says that when you die, wherever you end up going, you're there forever. Unless
Yeah,
there's a couple of reincarn ones that believe in reincarnation. But Christianity, for example, if you've been a good person, and you try to do your best, etc., you'll go to heaven and you're there forever, right?
Nothing to do with being a good person. I'll challenge you on this.
Oh, okay. But regardless, the point is, like, if you're going to be there forever is quite a long time. Extending your lifetime on Earth by a few hundred years is really not going to make that much difference, is it? Compared to the trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of years you'll be elsewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I mean the concept of me, if I was the only one that could choose, right? And the concept of me, not enjoying all of my children's lives, but then they die before I die.
That would be very sad.
Yeah.
And then
But I answered
having
this
to
question at
create
18 and
maybe
might ask for
another
it
new
different
life,
now.
I'd be like, no, why would I want that much pain?
No, I'll leave you on that anecdote. Just back to what you said about Brian Johnson, like ending up, dying in the next 5 years. There was a guy in the 70s called Jim Fixx, and he was the author of the book, The Complete Book of Running, in 1977. It's credited with popularizing running as a sort of recreational fitness, and helped spark people to go out in the boom of the 70s. But in fact, sadly, Fixx tragically died of a heart attack at the age of 52 in July 84 while actually out running near his home, Vermont. And his death raised widespread debate about the risks of actually and benefits of running. And it's just, he was actually a heavy smoker, and earlier in his life, he was extremely overweight, and he had a genetic, he had like family history of heart disease. So it was unbelievable, but it really spanned a lot of, like, people do not go out running and don't read the book.
It's just saying, like, my grandfather's in his late 80s now, my mum's dad, and he smokes more cigars than I've ever seen anyone smoke, ever. And he drinks probably a bottle of wine a day. And his doctor said to him, like, a year or two ago, you really need to cut it down. He's like, what is the point?
Yeah, what is the point?
I have nothing...
Charles, if he stopped, he'd probably die.
Yeah, I know. This is what he said. He was like, the thing is that sort of when you hit your mid-80s, right? Which hopefully all of us will do, cross, touch wood. What is there left to do? Yeah. Eventually your body does start to break down no matter what you do. So why not smoke and drink and just enjoy the rest of your years?
Well, on that bombshell, I'll say, obviously, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe, hit the bell icon for any further notifications of future episodes, and have a great weekend all.
And if you didn't like what you heard, sorry.
Yeah.
We don't care.
Charles doesn't care. We care a little bit.
Yeah. Laters. Cheers.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.